Hi, and welcome to another episode of my Green Mountain Boys Tours on location videos. This video has been re-recorded. Today we are talking about Burgoyne's objective, Old Bennington and the Continental Storehouse. The Battle of Bennington occurred in 1777 during the Revolutionary War. At that time, a British army, starting out in Canada, attacked Bennington for supplies that they needed to capture Albany, New York. They had hoped to capture a 30-day supply in Bennington and southern Vermont. The mostly Hessian or German attack group sent by British General Burgoyne were stopped outside of town and the state, and they were surprised to find themselves outnumbered. They did not know that John Stark and 1,500 New Hampshire militiamen had arrived in time to defend Bennington from attack. The Bennington Battle Monument was built to commemorate and mark the site of the storehouse that was successfully defended at the battle. What was this storehouse, and where was it? I have put together new information about this important Revolutionary War supply depot and Vermont's most revolutionary town of Bennington. The battle monument was built in the center of the highway on the crest of the hill, as nearly opposite to the site of the Continental Storehouse as practical. So where was this highway? As a part of the new battle monument's design, a section of old Bennington buildings were demolished, representing Bennington's early history, and the Old North Road leading from Monument Avenue to Harwood Hill was discontinued. The Green Mountain Boys, Vermont's revolutionary patriots, began sequestering Loyalists' property within the state just before the battle to raise Herrick's militia of 200 soldiers. John Fassett stored supplies on his property for this purpose, as he had also done since the capture of Fort Ticonderoga in 1775. Joseph Trumbull, in Connecticut, an important commissary during the war among other things, sent supplies through Bennington through the Committee of Safety network that was forming. John Fassett and his sons stored and transported these supplies to the militia wherever they were located. The Fassetts, Deacon John, John Jr., Jonathan, Amos, and Benjamin, traded officers' duties in the militia for the roles of commissaries, quartermasters, and wagon drivers. Also, just before the battle, Isaac Ticknor came to town to gather and store supplies in Bennington for the Continental Army as commissary. The army was then located at Havre or Peebles Island and Stillwater, New York, defending Albany. They were not at the famous Saratoga battlefield location yet. The attacking British army was stopped, and the battle happened 2 days later, just over the state line, protecting the town. The German dragoons were miscast as defenders, and John Stark's army of New Hampshire, Massachusetts, and Vermont militia captured many of the attackers, including the would-be dragoon or cavalry unit looking for their horses in Vermont. So, did Bennington have the quantity of supplies that Burgoyne thought it had? 30 days' worth for his 10,000-person army? Yes. When you look at the storehouse journal left by Isaac Ticknor and an inventory by Benjamin Lincoln after the battle in October, and compare this with the soldiers' needs for 30 days, you will find that Bennington was exactly the 30-day supply plum that Burgoyne thought it to be. But the Patriots had hidden or moved away many of these supplies before the attack. We have a story for this. Isaac Ticknor was at first refused food at the Dewey or Walloomsac Tavern while the battle was happening. He was just returning from driving cattle to Stillwater for the Continental Army. He was assisted by Stark's men, and they were ambushed that morning near the battlefield. He got his meat from Mrs. Dewey with this story. So, Bennington both won the battle and had cleared the supplies out of town in case they lost. There was a military hospital located on Stephen Fay's land in front of the Catamount Tavern throughout the war. This traffic island may be a remnant of the temporary hospital and a lost part of the Continental Storehouse legacy. Elijah Dewey's involvement with horses and livestock make his paddock off Elm Street a possible location for the horses Burgoyne expected to capture in Vermont. Dewey was involved with transportation, a town pound was near his tavern, and he was a militia officer, and later his descendants had a successful horse farm off Dewey Street in Bennington. In 1779, Isaac Ticknor was court-martialed, yet found not guilty of supply abuses. He and other commissaries really did profit from the war, contributing to the devaluation of currency that hindered the war effort. George Washington ordered the stopping of supplies to the Continental Storehouse in Vermont at this time. Vermont then used the State Arms House as a state storehouse during the Vermont Republic years, when Vermont became estranged from the other states late in the war. It was built by Jonathan Robinson and his wife Mary Fassett, Deacon John's eldest daughter. It is shown, and so I think the Continental Storehouse also is, on Ralph Earl's View of Bennington, painted in the 1790s. The Monument Association was formed around 1860 to design and build the Bennington Battle Monument. Highland Hall, who spearheaded the building effort, worried that the exact locality, that is to say within a few paces of the Continental Storehouse, where the stores Burgoyne's army so sadly needed and so signally failed to get, is not now known. George Wadsworth Robinson, a descendant of the pioneer Robinson family, heard this and famously marched up to the storehouse site with a shovel and dug up several stones of its foundation, revealing its location. Despite this, the monument was built where it is, which was then the center of the road and opposite the Fassett Barn or Continental Storehouse, by about 30 yards. The caretaker's house or key house was built almost on the site of the storehouse, probably just north of it. The first Continental Storehouse marker is in this picture in front of the key house. It was installed by the Fay family. It read, "On this site stood the Continental Storehouse, the rendezvous of the Green Mountain Boys who fought the glorious Battle of Bennington of August 1777. This battle turned the scale of victory in favor of American independence. To the memory of those patriots, this humble monument was erected by one who had a father and 9 uncles in the battle, one of whom was killed." More markers replaced the first, but had the same text. These included a barrier around them. Now recently, the site of the Continental Storehouse has become partially lost a second time. What would Highland Hall or the Fay family think? A new driveway for a house built after the monument was installed on Monument Circle in the 1980s. The original driveway for this house came from Fairview Street. Now, some electric and HVAC units for this house occupy the place of the original few Continental Storehouse markers. The Continental Storehouse markers were often being damaged by cars because they stood in the parking lot and nearest to the gift shop where you buy tickets to go up to the monument. So the marker was moved for these reasons right in front of the monument gift shop where it is today. So then, where was the Fassett Barn or storehouse that foiled the British actually located? Did we lose this spot? I really wanted to know this, yet nobody knew or seemed to be interested when I was researching it 10 years ago. I finally found the answer in a box at the monument. The site is thankfully preserved in the title to the Bennington Battle Monument lands in diagram form. What archaeological evidence was there at the time of building the monument, and what is left after construction is not known or a part of the description. Also, I wanted to know where the Continental Storehouse was today. You know, in old beam form. As we know, building parts are often reused, especially here in Bennington. And I found what I was looking for in the day papers at Bennington Museum. Hiram Harwood mentioned that it was torn asunder after the Revolution. The day papers mentioned the pool house near the monument as being built from timbers from the storehouse. I was able to see this post and beam framing myself a few years ago. Isaac Ticknor and Deacon John Fassett, the two commissaries most well known for the Continental Storehouse, there were others, are buried near each other in the Bennington Center Cemetery. Other Continental Storehouse sites in Bennington include the Mirror House on Week Street, built of the State Arms Foundation stones. Isaac Ticknor's house on West Road, also the site of the David Redding hanging. The Herrick Tavern and Soldiers' Encampment on West Road. Barracks may have been built here for the troops. The Safford Inn on Main Street and Stark's Mill in North Bennington are both sites of flour and corn mills in 1777.